Yeah, awesome. Today we will start class actually with a small artist talk in demo. Um, here's the bell coming, and I just came across James's YouTube videos roughly 3 weeks ago, I think. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think 3 weeks ago I saw your videos in YouTube. For 4 weeks plus minus for the first time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so we started chatting, and James, I quickly will introduce you to him, and then he will talk more about it. He is an architect who now specializes actually in architectural visualization, which is perfect for right now because that's the phase we are going to focus more on this project. James also teaches actually at, as you can see, UCLAx. Basically, also teaches the sketching stuff. He will show his demo with a different program on the iPad, but primarily the main goal of the idea of this exercise we do today is so you can see why we faculty, but also he as a professional working in the field, stress the need to learn how to sketch. It's not about making nice drawings, but it's a communication tool, and sometimes a faster communication tool than just only labor-intensive CAD work or rendering. But there are also various ways, as you remember from me talking about sketching. It's not always a Michelangelo painting, but it can also just be a napkin drawing that as easily can be as effective to communicate an idea. So he will give a quick talk about his work, how he grew into the profession where he is right now, and then he will talk a little bit. I sent him the Blob project, and then he will do a little live demo on it.
Okay. Is that is that my that's my cue?
Yep, that's your cue.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Yeah. First of all, I don't see anyone else's picture but mine, but maybe that's the norm.
Yeah, we don't have I'm the only one that has the video on. Oh, actually,
okay.
I don't have my video on.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. Oh, I see some people. Okay. Hey, hi, Klaus. First time I've met you. And then the person that's saying things in the background, is that someone that's helping you produce your Zoom? Or is that a student?
Background?
There, that person.
Oh, no.
Student?
Yeah, it's just students, yeah. Just
okay, all right. So I had asked Klaus to prompt me with questions. So I'm not ready to talk completely off the cuff, Klaus, but if you have a question, okay.
I will help you. So
okay.
You like what I through the discussion with you, and what I found so interesting in your story is you are a licensed architect, but not primarily work, or the service you focus on primarily is actually architectural visualization and sketching.
Right. Yes. Well, yeah. I guess I can take it from here. I'm okay with that. I was just curious, how many are in your class? I'm wondering how nervous to be. 12 people?
Yeah.
Okay, I can handle that. I think there are 18 people in my UCLA class. So yeah, so as Klaus said, and Klaus and I met because he made a couple of thoughtful comments on my YouTube channel, and I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel. So I thought I could immediately tell he was a thoughtful guy. And so I wrote back like, "What's up? Who are you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm me." And so it led to a couple of phone calls. and hopefully he's going to return the favor and he's going to help out my class. And I was especially surprised when Klaus turned out. I was telling him that, yeah, I saw the tutorials on Shaper 3D and Concepts app, and he goes, yes, I recorded those. I'm like, okay, well, I hit the bullseye in terms of looking for influencers, so that's great. But as Klaus said, I am an architect, and I got to a point in my career, I guess it was now, you can tell looking at me, 25 years ago, when I was first starting out, and I realized that I wasn't one of the chosen people at the firms where I was working. Maybe I didn't have the right resume, or I didn't have the right kind of who knows what background, magic sauce, and I wasn't really I didn't see myself getting promoted and rising to the top of the firm. So I thought all along that I had really one choice, well, two choices. I had to either start working for myself and become an architect with my own practice, which isn't bad, but the other choice was to stay involved with the highest level of projects, like projects around the world, theaters, museums, casinos, that kind of thing, beautiful resorts and hotels. And the only way I was going to be involved in that was still working with other architects. And one day a person came into our office who was, I later found out that their term was architectural renderer. And they sat down at a table and they had shorts on and like a, Pacific California t-shirt, and they set up their watercolors, and the principals of the firm, the people who's I've been trying to get their attention for 2 years, they came out and sat down with this renderer, and suddenly this person was very important in getting all the attention, and their job was really fun as far as I could tell. So I said, well, that's what I want to be. I want to be an architectural renderer someday. And I had a couple of other twists and turns, but eventually I got my invitation to do that. A friend of mine was a renderer and couldn't fill a job one day, or actually one summer, and they asked me if I would like to take over for them. And I was very nervous, but I agreed. And then you've all heard the expression, fake it till you make it. So I was just scrambling to figure out how to be a renderer. The firm needed a renderer so bad that they gave me every opportunity to make mistakes and, coached me back into the right place. But I basically went out and bought every single book I could find on rendering. That was back when there used to be books. I don't know if all of you know.
I still have a lot of books.
Do you all remember books? And it's and I guess the benefit of growing up like we did, Klaus, is that we now get to have beautiful walls full of books, where very few people seem to have that anymore from scratch. So anyway,
and you realize you need glasses, you can't read the small print anymore.
Well, I mean, with a computer, my eyesight went even faster. So glasses have been a reality for the last 10 years, I suppose. But anyway, so that was how I got to do what I do. And now I guess I had multiple clients that were willing to give me a try while I was still acquiring my skills. And then I guess about, I don't know when it was, 20 years ago or something, I fell in with one architect in particular. His name is David Rockwell. He has something called the Rockwell Group in New York City. And they were working so fast. They didn't have the normal architect's extreme serious focus and discipline. They were more like, we've got 7 restaurants to do and 2 casinos, and we need some ideas. So let's go, everybody. So I would go into their office, and not only did I become a better renderer, but I could also bring back my design skills from when I thought I was just going to be an architect. And so I became kind of a one-stop shopping for both someone that could create the pretty pictures, and I'll show you some of those. But I could create the pretty pictures of the projects and also help the architects design them. and I guess most of my work these days ends up being just the pictures because they have entire studios full of people. But this was a project for one of the NFL teams. They were going to create a whole area around their stadium. And you can see in the background, here's their little stadium. And then this is the trend these days where these teams create entire neighborhoods around their stadiums. And a lot of my projects begin with what we'll be talking about today, which is it used to be that I had to create these perspective backgrounds, but these days that's all done in Rhino or SketchUp. And see, I'll go back out of here. So the large bulk of my work is doing these finished renderings over Rhino or SketchUp views. And one of the reasons that's become important, I also do a lot of this conceptual stuff, and I'll show you some of those right now. Let me go back. And this is something called the Museum of Broadway that I think I can get a little closer in on this for you all, where in a typical job like this, I will just start sketching in a very loose way. This is related to that exercise that Klaus did, Professor Kunin. Should I be calling you Professor Kunin?
No, absolutely not. Actually, all my students just call me Klaus.
Yeah. You are Klaus. Okay. All right. But you may recall, some of you may recall that drawing that Klaus did in red, looking down on this building. And he was making the point of how concept sketches really could be very quick and minimal just to get the idea across. So if you look at, I'll show you an example of.
How long does it take you, like those sketches you have there right now, how long does it take you roughly from start to finish to make one?
Well, that's a great question. I'll take a simple one. And one of the nice things about Procreate is that you can tap on, I think you're seeing my overall view, but I can tap on this canvas icon and I can get canvas information. And that will actually tell me the statistics section of this will tell me that this sketch took 1 hour and 24 minutes. And but that's a pretty fast one, even by my standards. But you can see when you look at this, it's really very, I think of this as very crude. Whereas most people, if they were doing a garbage can, would want to be very careful. But because of my economic survival depends on it, I've developed these techniques, and I think Klaus has done the same, where you create shorthand, kind of a shorthand language for things. And you can see here that I incorporate a lot of images that I will pull in off of the web. Like here's a I think this is a photograph that I took in my client's office and pasted in. There's also a great feature in Procreate where I can do what's called the video replay, and you can sort of see how this process of how I'm starting. I can actually accelerate it this way, but you can see this process where I begin with a SketchUp background, and then using just the lessons of drawing that I've learned over time, lessons of perspective, setting up a horizon line, setting up vanishing points, I just begin to freehand sketch. And this is obviously, I've developed this talent over many, many years, but it gives you an indication of, you really can be a lot. It's all about making your ideas, communicating your ideas to others in as few gestures as possible, because you're saving them. They pay you, in my case, they pay me by the hour, so I have to work quickly so my clients don't freak out. especially when what I'm doing is being compared to what it would take to do this in computers, say, because they can go to these, what I would call an offshore or third-party renderers these days, and they can have these models built very inexpensively in computer software, but they won't have this character. And a big part of what I'm offering clients is that it would be almost impossible to go back to this part of the drawing. I'll try and find the original. Yeah, I'm not even sure I have it around anymore. But if I go back to that first image, to the great advantage of sketching and the nice way that it still works within this digital world of 3D is that so many decisions would have to be made by so many people working together in a tight team to get this sketch to the point at the end where I took it. So to get that sketch from there to there, and that's, look, this is going to be much longer, but I'll look at the canvas information. And in this case, statistics, this was a 14-hour drawing. And that went through multiple iterations. I would maybe work on it for 3 hours. And then my client would look at it and say, okay, well, let's make a whole bunch of, in fact, you can see.
Oh, these were these annotations you saw sometimes, like.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, I was hoping to make that point, and thank you for making it. So you'll see every once in a while that the red lines appear again. And that's where we're working very closely with the client, but it's a very streamlined process compared to what it would be if you had to go back and forth for days with a group of computer renderers. And it does obviously takes a talent. It takes me knowing my client, and it takes my sensibilities being the same as my clients. So it doesn't work for everybody, but thank goodness it works for these people. And again, I guess the only other point I'd like to make before we move on is that if you look at any single part of this drawing, it's just gestures, right? But it's gestures that align with the physics of the real world, so that parallel lines go off to a single vanishing point. Excuse me. And when light.
Can you hold on 1
Go
second?
ahead.
Because this
Sure,
is actually,
yeah.
No, this is actually really, really perfect what you're pointing out there, because this is one thing I also try to tell students very often when they're afraid to sketch. They make few very clean lines, and then later when the drawing is done, the drawing looks kind of boring because there isn't really much.
Yeah, right.
It's just it's empty. And one thing I try to tell them is also the quality of lines actually doesn't really matter, but it's the quantity of lines.
Right.
You give your eyes something to see, and it's kind of give a perfect example here. It's semi believable, but the mind fits in all the rest.
Yeah, it really does, and it is a little bit like you overwhelm them with so many things that the gestalt effect. I mean, here's a typewriter, right? I mean, who knew you could do a typewriter with 11 lines, right? But if I tweak back out of that, it's pretty convincing typewriter with a little light on top of it. So a lot of that, again, there's 25 years of practice that goes into this, and I tend to take that for granted. So with my own students, I find myself going way too fast, and I have to slow way down. So I can't. All of this information is overload in any situation. I mean, in this situation, we're just having fun, and I'm trying to maybe inspire several of you to realize that, wow, maybe I don't have to be so careful. Maybe I can. I call this blob sketching, where you just start making blobs, and then you see what you want to see in that blob. So this one in particular, I think I started this one complete. Yeah, this is a good example. So I started this one completely from scratch, literally with these red lines. So that was, and I had this little sketch, I had this little plan down here as my reference, but that also was a freehand sketch at one point. And you can see how, I start with this, and then and this is really important for you as designers. You can start with something as simple as that, and then you begin to have a dialogue with the drawing that you're creating. So you see things in the strokes that you are making in real time versus having to, if I had to draw that book on a blank page just with black lines, it wouldn't be half as simple, or it would be 10 times harder than looking at this chunky red blob and within those shapes saying, oh, I see a book shape in there, right? And then you let it go, and there's the book. It comes together. So it's not simple, but the blob, I felt very liberated by the idea of doing these blobs instead of just drawing immediately. And that's also an important point to make about the iPad, because it has never been easier, either in concepts or in Procreate like I use. It has never been easier to erase and start over because of what we all know, the good old layers. And you can see that so that looks like a simple sketch, but that's 20 to 24 layers right there. Mm-hmm. So you really want to, what I found is I used to do watercolor in my career. And I guess this is the other part of my story that may have some interest, is that I had become a renderer and I was specializing in watercolor. But as digital rendering and photorealistic digital rendering got more and more inexpensive and became more and more of a commodity, I felt my livelihood felt somewhat threatened by the fact that it was so much easier to revise a design if it was in the computer with a bunch of students working at very inexpensive beginning salaries. They could make 5 or 6 mistakes and it would still be less expensive than the kind of care that's involved with hand drawing. But watercolor made that even worse, because in watercolor, once I did something like that, it was very difficult to revise it for the client. Whereas with this drawing, I'll give you an example of, I can just add a layer. Let's say that we wanted to change that bobcat to somebody call out an animal. Who would like to see a different animal?
A raccoon.
A raccoon. I was going to say raccoon, but then I thought, it kind of looks like a raccoon already. But let's try a raccoon.
One of my
favorite
animals. Trash panda.
Is the raccoon?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, trash panda. Now I don't know. I wish I was looking at a raccoon, but I'll take a chance. So I could go. Let's say that all of this drawing was fine, and the client just said, "No, can you make that a raccoon?" So I would come in here, and I hope you can see me, but I'm going to go to my palette.
You can see it.
Okay, great. Okay, and then I would go to a white and make a very down and dirty. Then I would select just a flat brush, kind of a magic marker. Then I'd come over here, and I'd first erase, the animal that I had, and take it to some point that I knew I could blend it. Or even better, I would go back here, and I love this. I could sample by tapping this dot. I can sample this color here. Now remember, I'm still on a whole separate layer over the top of this entire drawing, and I could just try and be closer to the initial wall color, right? And then I could take a soft brush, which is like an airbrush, and I could sample this color, this darker gray, and I'll try and make that big enough. And then I could come in and just kind of fade that difference, right? So at some point in 1 minute, I've got a new canvas that I can start working on top of. if I was doing that in watercolor, I would literally sometimes cut a patch out of the watercolor and make another watercolor and insert that in, and then put, Scotch tape on the back of both pieces of paper.
That's
But
how
now
I
I can
learned how to do marker illustrations back home in Germany for graphic and interior design. You just cut everything, and then with photo mount, you compost it.
Exactly. It's just I mean, that's the kind of thing we used to do, right? We really used to do it. So now I'm gonna see if I'm true to my promise. I'm gonna make a raccoon, but I'm gonna be in a blob, and I'm gonna make a raccoon that looks up at you when he's caught putting his foot into your back door trying to get your dog food out. And so he's snuck up in the middle of the night. He's got his little ears. This is really going to be bad, but bear with me. And they have that characteristic face, which I can't really remember offhand, but he's back here with his other paw, and his haunches are here. And he's sneaking along very stealthily. And maybe he's got a foot back here. Okay.
Have like a white face with a black band going over the eyes.
Right. Easy for you to say. So let's see. Let's make him. Yeah, it looks more like a small child that's scooting around. But then I would switch to the black, and I'd say, okay, well, try and remember what a raccoon looks like. And it's starting to come alive already, right?
Mm.
And then maybe their ears are more triangular, less like a panda. And he's got that little nose, and on, that kind of thing. So that I hope I'm making my point that it's the ease of revising these things that has gotten so much better. And they've got that little furry thing. So that would go on, and finally I'd get there. Okay. And then if we tweak ourselves out of there, you can see we've got our raccoon. And then another amazing thing about this whole world of digital that we didn't used to have is I can select this layer I've created, and it's already on its own layer. So I can go to the selection box, and I can make that raccoon smaller if I made it the wrong size. And I can even go into this wonderful warp mode, and maybe I got the proportions of my raccoon wrong, and I can stretch them out like this. So that wasn't anything we could do in the old days, right, Klaus? If you were out of luck. You had to start all over again. So it's really, I guess, why I believe in the future of this platform more than watercolor. I hate to give up watercolor, and I hate to give up pencil. I still love to do them, because you're left with a physical artifact. I'll reach over here and find a watercolor. I actually hadn't planned this, but I've got a watercolor just hanging around on and you can see the level of detail that we used to go to. And you can just imagine if I had to change one of these diners or one of these seating arrangements. And you can even, because of my window, you can even see the texture of the wallpaper. But it's a beautiful object just to have around, and it speaks to years and years of training and years of effort. So it has a lot of meaning for me. But this is the way I earn my living, though. This is the way to really get down and dirty, and you're still getting people what they need, which is this, which I think we should speak to, which is you're getting them the essence of your idea in a way that allows them to say, okay, I buy into this. And this could be with the simplest client or your art gallery project you're working on. You're getting the client to buy into this concept. Maybe in your case, it's getting the city government of Detroit to buy into it, or maybe Klaus and I have talked about the fantasy of getting the CEO of Shinola to buy into it. So suddenly all of your designs now, you know that by the end of the semester, it's actually going to be built or something, and you could build it as a class. But the first step is always persuading someone and using a what you might call using the ambiguity, the multiple interpretations that are possible when I show you a shelf like this, and you can look at that and say, well, that looks like a sand shark, and maybe that's a Buddha, and I guess those are little models of chairs. But if I was in China and I had promised you that I could do a photorealistic rendering of this for $750, my team of 10 people would be putting in individual 3D models of each of these chairs. And it would just be so, I don't know if this is too advanced a concept, but it would be so polygon intense and so computing intense. And in the end, it would be just way too specific, so that if the CEO of Shinola had a single objection, maybe, well, I don't like that lamp, you'd have to redo the entire thing rather than just saying, well, whatever lamp you want. I'm just suggesting a lamp, So I believe that's what keeps hand drawings relevant to this day, is not only as a way to design, to kind of liberate yourself in terms of design, but to also become, to what I call, maintain your design options further into the process before anybody can say, well, I don't like that, throw the whole thing out, by just keeping it all misty and cloudy. And I mean, even this is pretty specific, but that's because we put a lot of time into it. So this one, for instance, is
when I talk with students about why do we sketch today, even in the age of 3D modeling and rendering, is also never has been as accessible, powerful, and fast as today. And I actually, even in my own work, specialize really on everything 3D. But what I try to tell them very often is there's a certain appreciation by clients towards hand drawing, and they value this sometimes more. And there's also, for example, in portfolios, a problem I see very often is one rendering after the next. It looks very render fatigue. And I had this comment stated during an interview, and our last presenter, she's a lighting designer, and she said, like, they don't show them any 3D work because they can't really render a space out the way how it would later be in real life anyway. So they show them on purpose just two-dimensional illustrations to prevent that the client starts liking a 3D work and then gets frustrated when they see the real piece.
Exactly. And that's what I mean by maintaining your design options as the designer, because we've had to give up a lot of our, the design profession has had to give up a lot of control over the years with construction managers. I mean, you name it. There are all kinds of people who have gone into the middle now between us and our clients. And if you were Frank Lloyd Wright or Le Corbusier, you didn't want to hear about those people. Frank Lloyd Wright famously wanted to design everything in your house, and if you didn't let him, he would reject you as a client and not take your job. So, but anyway, I thought I do want this to be useful to all of you, and I thought it would be interesting to just show you, and you tell me if this sounds right, Klaus. I thought I would show you how I would import. I actually did a couple of views of your project, and I'll go back to that. So I opened up your SketchUp model, and I took this view, the standard SketchUp view of the inside of your garage. Is that correct, Klaus? Is that
the garage?
What I think it was? Okay. And I know you're all going to put an art gallery in it, right? Or something like that. And so I thought I'd show you, put my money where my mouth is and show you how it might be easy. If, for example, if you were to show your client this sketch, chances are they're going to be like, well, that's kind of weird. Why it's gray, and clients are very literal, so they might say, well, I don't want gray walls and a white wall there. And you would say, no, that's just the 3D modeling of the thing. Oh, you know what? I'm not even showing my image. I'm sorry. So yeah. So this was the. I'll go back to how I this was in my gallery, and I imported this from my main desktop computer, and I brought in both this background view in the traditional SketchUp language, and I also did this thing in the styles section of SketchUp. And very often what I'll do is the actual line drawing of my job can become somewhat repetitive and doesn't necessarily take great skill to do. Where my skill comes in is in visualizing the kind of emotional feeling of this space. And I think that's something that's going to be important for all of you to really bowl over your clients and to impress people. So I will often take my SketchUp model, which only takes half an hour to do, and I'll convert it in the style section of SketchUp to this line drawing. I forget what they call it, something like a pen line or something like that. And sometimes it comes in too light, and you can even quickly duplicate a layer, and then I can put this layer in something called multiply mode, which you may remember from SketchUp. I'm sorry, from Photoshop, and I know Concepts doesn't necessarily have that, but I'll get that line drawing good and dark, and I can also come in here and you can still see the remnants of how it came from SketchUp, because I took a screenshot instead of actually exporting a view. But I can even clean that up very quickly. I'll go ahead and merge all of these layers together. Now I have a single layer. I turn it on and off, and you can see that. And I can go to what Procreate calls rectangular selection mode. And just very quickly, starting up here, just place the pen down, stretch it across. I do it up there just so you can all see it. And I get the famous marching ants, come all the way down the part of the drawing that I want.
I'm sorry, can you repeat this step?
Say that again, please.
Can you repeat step, please? This one, when you make a square, you make it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is step only.
Sure. Yes. And thank you for
You
knowing
want
that
too fast.
your phone was causing feedback. So that's good. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know I'm going kind of quickly, but here's that single layer that we know we have, but I want to trim off this stuff on the top. Okay. So in Procreate, they have up here, they have something called the selection tool. And when you tap that, now I can lift this up. It gives you these options at the bottom, different ways that I can select things. So I can, the only one we need to know at the moment is this rectangular selection mode. And so I can come back down here, and all I'll do is I'll just put my pencil tip down at that top corner that I want to keep, and then I'll pull it down and across. And then you can see the famous Photoshop marching ants, indicating that it's been, okay.
Yeah, thank you. I just saw.
Okay. And then there are, there's lots of stuff. I know you're not actually learning Procreate, but just to show you the advantages of digital in general, down here, there's something called invert. I can invert that selection. And then for some reason, Procreate still uses this rather antiquated 3-finger swipe. And I do a 3-finger swipe, and I get this dialog box that comes up. And I'm going to choose the cut option. And when I do that, watch what happens. So that area around the part of the drawing that I want to keep goes away. Okay.
Okay,
And then,
can we use the same, we can get the same result if we use a snipping tool, or it will be different?
that's
You
a
know, the
question
snipping.
for Klaus.
Okay.
I mean, like in Windows, I mean, yeah, he could
Mhm.
have made the screenshot already to that part too, but I think he's just showing the process, how he brings an image in and then uses this, like in Photoshop. I mean, what
Yeah.
he shows right now is just basic pixel manipulation, and he uses Procreate. Photoshop would be the same, and
Yeah, I didn't mean it to be so custom and relevant only to Procreate. I was just sort of showing you, once you know these tricks, how quickly you can get down to
Yeah.
business, right?
Sorry, I'm just saying if it's gonna be the same result, like the same pixels, the same everything, that's if it doesn't make any difference, that's all. That's why I ask. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So I guess the next thing would be, well, I'll just go ahead and show you. If you all don't mind, I'll go kind of fast.
Mhm.
This is my brush that what I would call my blob brush. It's really just this flat brush. And my next step tends to be, and this is this thing that gives me the freedom, is I'll make sure I'm on a new layer, okay, because I don't want to mess up that first layer. And then I'll imagine the room that, I guess you call it imagining the room I would want to be in. And that's really all about light and dark. So I'll just come in and quickly, kind of, this is a nice way to just sort of feel like I'm taking control of my design, and I'll just kind of lay things in here, and I'm not worried about edges or anything. I'm just trying to get it to feel right to me from my experience. And I have been looking at photographs for, again, 30 years. So I'm coming at this with a certain set of criteria that I already know about.
Oh, that's
And,
actually really great you mentioned that, because that's another thing when I sometimes in discussions, I tell students, people who know how to draw human figures, chances are just very high. Not necessarily do you have to be artistic, but they just memorized what something has to look like. And
yes,
I
very
do a
true.
yeah, like with you too. Now you can draw on what you have memorized through your photography studies.
Yeah, and photography and art studies. I mean, a lot of the books that I first bought when I was becoming a renderer were literally art history books. And I would see, in fact, a lot of them had specifically to do with light. And I have quite a few books about a painter called Frederick Remington, who used to do, he would literally paint moonlight scenes. And I thought to myself, how could there be anything more counterintuitive than painting night, or painting something at night? It's just, how do you do it? Because there's no light to see. So I never quite found out what he did, but I assume he went out when it was moonlight and just sort of studied the colors and made mental notes about how things looked kind of greenish to him, and green, blue. And lo and behold, he would come back and make these absolutely amazing paintings of Native Americans on their horses looking over valleys and things. So here again, I'm all on one layer, and I just generally know that I want the ceiling to be darker, and I'm worried about the art. Okay, so I'm going to make the walls a little darker, and I'm going to get to a point here. And again, you can see how sloppy it is, but at least the pencil is moving. At least I know I'm making progress. So that floor could be a little darker, because I think contrast is important. And at this point, I'll usually come in and say, well, usually in another layer, maybe in white. So let's add another layer. And what's missing from my art gallery? Well, fantastic large works of art from local artists or wherever you all are finding your artists, right? So now I'll put in large works of art. And again, I'm putting them in a way that they're more or less working to the vanishing points, which makes it even sketching can become more compelling if it's obeying the laws of perspective. And I think I'm going to ignore this is certainly the architect's prerogative, but I'm going to ignore that window and say, well, you need more gallery space. I'm sorry, Klaus. But so I'll put that in. So now I'm starting to see in these paintings or these blobs, I'm starting to see, oh yeah, I get it. I can see how it would work. And maybe I go to the eraser up here, and you all have erasers and concepts. And because I'm on this layer, because I'm on a layer that's just about the paintings, I can now just quickly trim these up, make them a little more believable, right? And I'm just doing this freehand. A lot of these programs, and I think Concepts is the same, you don't necessarily have to just do everything like this. You can also, for instance, pull a line. Even with the eraser, I can start here and pull, and then that stroke will be saved, and I can line it up how I want and get a nice straight outline to that. Okay. So it's making some progress. And what's missing? Well, what is missing is a scale figure. And again, as Klaus says, this does take a lot of practice, but I know my horizon is somewhere about here. I think your space is about 12 feet tall, as I recall. So heads of people are going to come up to about the halfway point in the room. And I'll just, again, I know proportions. So, and just through studying them, and I used to draw some of the worst people you've ever seen, but I forced myself to get better at that and observe human figures. And
one comment you also made was actually really nice too. Why do we even sketch? Now it's not necessarily also only to present, but sometimes through the process of sketching and sketching even this loosely, it's actually an ideation tool, and you make discoveries and you develop ideas.
Yeah, you really do.
Yeah,
because you're feeling what you're getting the sense. I'm kind of violating my own rule. Like, I try to keep things on different layers, but I'll go back to this big messy layer now because I see where I want to get some more contrast.
Sorry to interrupt again, but the way you do the human figure, it's amazing. You go so fast and really look like a human figure.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
mine fits in the rest. This is why I say if you draw stick figure, it's pointless. It's useless. But this is just very sloppy, but it's enough because your imagination puts everything.
You can tell it is a human figure. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Love it.
I'm glad you say that. Very often, what I'll do. So let me jump ahead a little bit more to give more of these tricks. Let's add a layer where we do a little more detail, and this goes to your point, both of you, that now within this figure, so I've drawn it in a way that I know is proportional. I'm going to try and go over here and find a tool that I use. This is a leftover tool from years ago as an architect, right? And Klaus knows it instantly. I'll turn some lights on. It's getting a little dark in here. And this is known as a divider, and it's a beautiful thing. It's about a $200 tool, but it can create equal numbers, equal separation. So if I apply that, I have to be careful touching it to the iPad screen because sometimes it starts it's like putting metal in a microwave or something. But the human figure, depending on who you talk to, can be broken up into either 7 or 8 equal slices. And head. So if I call this, I'm going to go back. Let's see. I'm in a new layer. I'm going to make sure I'm in the technical pen. Yes, I am. I'm going to turn the opacity of that pen all the way back up. Okay, now it's working for me. And I'll make it really fat and ugly. So here's the floor, roughly, you know, split between these 2 feet. And I'm going to stretch this thing out so it goes to 7 divisions. Oops. And it's hard to see because of the backlining, but there's number 7. And then if I throw this in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can see that the head is up there, you know, filling in between 6 and 7. And I think the belly button is at 3.5, if I'm not mistaken. Klaus, you have to tell me.
My note is better.
Okay. So, you know, I'm sort of there. I'll turn that layer off. So when I go, but this, I guess this speaks to, don't think of this as, wow, I could never do that. Think of this as, oh, this is a way to learn to do this. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. That figure's a little dark for me right now. So I'm just going to reduce the opacity because I really want to I want my mind not to be overtaken by this. But I'll come in here to a new layer and I'll say, okay, well, I can imagine that person is, well, it looks like they're talking on the phone, right? So, and I think maybe that's their hand, and they're like, you know, they're being really disrespectful, by the way. I mean, you're in an art gallery, you really shouldn't be on your phone, right? But that's the way I think. So here's their arm that's up there holding that phone. And here's their back, and maybe their other arm is down here casually carrying the thing that they got at the front door. And then I get down to this point. So why am I doing this? I'm doing this because this goes to everything you're doing. This could be a television cabinet just as well as a human figure. I'll make the wind puffing out their jacket a little bit. And the feet are always the hardest part for me, but I'll throw them in. And then this heel is up because he's walking. And this is, again, something I've had to learn over years and years. Okay. So that's and I've got that a little wrong, right? I've got that a little wrong. So
no, it looks good. It looked good.
I'll come back here, and maybe that needs to be better there, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe better first time.
It's just such a beautiful demonstration, again, to show that it's not clean lines. It's just quantity of cricket lines, and your mind fills in the rest.
Exactly. But that's true. But it's helped so much more by the study of proportions.
Yeah.
And the study of proportions can go on in your private room without anyone saying, "Oh, that looks terrible." You know, it really is a nice thing. But while we're on this, and again, that's a little dark and jarring for my taste. So I'll turn that person down and keep it more suggestive. But I will also then go in, and I think Concepts does the same thing, where I can go in now, and once I have this room, like SketchUp makes it so easy, I can go and turn on what's called the drawing guide, okay? Mm-hmm. And the drawing guide by default comes on as a 2-dimensional grid. I think you all can see that. Yeah. But if I tap what's called edit the drawing guide, then I can switch from a 2-dimensional grid. I never do this with my UCLA class. I should start doing this, lifting up the iPad. I always get worried I won't put it back in the right place. But I can switch here to perspective, okay? And then all of that grid goes away, but that's because it's waiting for me to tap where the first vanishing point meets. And that's going to be right about here. I don't have to get it perfect. I just have to be close. I'm going to darken these guidelines, make it easier to see. And watch these guidelines relative to the SketchUp model as I drag this point around. And I'm going to watch. So that's pretty good right there. So I've just dragged that vanishing point to where it is parallel to these existing lines from the SketchUp model, or I should say close enough. And that's enough for me. I mean, you can go beyond that. This is actually, believe it or not, this is a 2-point perspective, right? Because you can see how these lines also go off at an angle. And that's because they're headed out way out here, and they're going to be coming to a point out here. So what I'll do, I won't be super careful about it, but I'll just, in my eye, I'll travel down along here and I'll drop the second vanishing point down there. So under normal circumstances, I'll take a lot longer to do all that, but that's another example of how multiple programs, concepts, Morpholio, Trace, and Procreate can help you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry.
Do you know, did you ever come across Painstorm Studio?
I don't think I have, no.
It's for Mac, PC, and iPad, and it's a Russian CG artist, and he was so frustrated with the drawing tools, he wrote his own Painstorm Studio app.
Wow.
And his perspective grid has actually the ability, when you start, let's say you have a brush of a figure and you start painting closer to the vanishing point, the brush size automatically gets smaller.
It's smaller. Oh, that's very good.
Yeah.
Well, here's the payoff for all of you that have been patient enough to watch this. So remember, we were up here and I was up to something. I hadn't explained what yet. And in this layer is where I'm going to start drawing the outlines for these paintings. So they, again, incredibly crude gesture, but it's going to get even more real in a second because I've got a new layer. And by tapping that layer, I can go over to this choice called Drawing Assist. And so long as I've set these vanishing points already, which we already did, I can now tap Drawing Assist. You can see that it comes on in the layer. You can see it suddenly says the word assisted. And now all I have to do, what this means is this is going to guide me. Every line I make is going to want to naturally conform to either one of these sets of vanishing point lines, or it will always conform to vertical and horizontal. And now I can come in and just put the shape of these paintings in. And let's say that they're big, exciting paintings that some high school class out near Wayne State creates. And they've made them out of shipping crates. And so they're a lot cruder than you would find in an art gallery, but it makes them even more exciting. And I'm not even going to worry about, lining up perfectly with the white, because again, this is creating a kind of energy, and it's already beginning to suggest that the white that we used before, just trying to get a feel for the space, is already suggesting the contents of the paintings, like the paintings are these abstract paintings somehow, okay? And later on, I can get fancy and take the lines out where they cross over those people. But for now, I'll just leave it at that. And then maybe, what would an art gallery be without a refreshment table in the middle? So without even a blob guiding me, I'll just come down here, and you can see I'm still using these lines that are provided to me as guidelines. And I'll make this sort of, that's going to be too big, but I'll make this refreshment table that goes across half the space. And you can see I'm obviously too low. All I'm doing really is the footprint of that table. And I know that this is, so here's where the proportions come in again. So I know this is 0 because that's my ground. And I know this is roughly eye level. That's about 5 feet because that's roughly where I put my figures, is at 5 feet. So I can come here and just make a very simple calculation. I know that 5 feet is 60 inches. And I know that a typical table is 30 inches tall. So I can just start at this point and come up halfway. And that halfway will be the leading edge of that table. So here again, it's a combination of knowledge, just observing things over the years, or it's something you could look up immediately in architectural graphic standards or in any standard textbook. And so now I have a line representing a huge table with a tablecloth. And to make that a little more obvious, I'll go back to, and I'll create a layer below the layer. So here's this thing we just did. I can turn it on and off, and you can see that. And I can create a layer. I'll go back to the layer below it, then add a new layer, okay? And my goal here is, well, it's nice to have a table, but I got to see a tablecloth. I got to see something. So I'll switch to a white color again. I'll go back to this favorite blobby brush of mine. And just like we did with the paintings, remember, I'm underneath this layer that we did describing the boundary of the table. So I'll go back, and under this painting, I'll just make my brush big enough. And that brush will block out everything that's between this table and the background drawing that we've been working on, okay? And I can get that far, and then of course I wiped out the person, but I'm not worried about that at this point. I obviously have an issue that, by the way, I may have to switch to, can you all still hear me?
Yeah, we
Because
can hear you perfectly.
My AirPods just made the noise that they're running out of energy. So I'm going to close my door too, because someone's vacuuming the apartment. Okay, that's the best we can do. Real world. So here's the eraser. I'll go back to this layer that was assisted, and I'll just take that back line out like that. So it's no longer creating an MC Escher illusion. Okay, so there's my table. And we'll get into the light in a moment, but I want to do a couple last things that I think would be fun for you, because hopefully everyone would agree that nothing I've done yet is rocket science. Okay, I've mostly followed the SketchUp model. I did use a little skill at making my people. Okay, but I'm going to go and make this very dramatic all of a sudden for your art gallery, because we're going to make it so we're going to put in a big skylight. And if that's all right, is that okay, Klaus?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, good.
I have that in my own plan anyway, because
okay, right. So you've got a very big space, and a skylight would really just make it very cool all of a sudden. So I'll add, now I can really tell these are dying. Hang on. Let's see.
I think I think your mic is out now.
Okay.
Yeah, we lose it. Yeah.
But you're still there, just very silent.
System, same as system. Unmute my speaker. How about now? Can you hear me?
You're very, very silent.
Okay. Bear with me.
No worries.
We'll bring out the new.
Oh, the Good Road one. I see. Okay.
Okay. And hopefully this will work for us. So many things can go wrong with these Zoom lessons, right?
I have the competitor. I have the podcast.
Okay.
Because other people really love the road or the podcast.
Okay, so this ought to be interesting. Let's see. I don't even see the road yet. I wonder why not. Maybe I unplugged it. Let's see. All right, let's see.
It's getting better.
Oh, that worked?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Can you
Yeah.
increase the gain a little bit?
Yes, let me try that. Yeah, I need to get much better at all this. I think I'll just try and talk closer. How about that?
Okay.
Is that okay? Ish?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, all right. So we've and I believe Klaus is recording this, so maybe
Yeah.
if I move kind of fast, you'll all forgive me, but I've added this new layer at the top, and I want to do a skylight now. So the same principle will apply as the one that we did here, the table, the drinks table. I'll go into drawing assist, and this is a very shorthand, shorthand meaning quick, down and dirty. So here I am I'm in my designer hat now, and I'm really I have no idea where I want the skylight, but I'm just going to draw in an option and see if it works. And maybe that's okay. And I know skylights have a thickness to them. So I'll draw that thickness in. And I'm pretty okay with that. It's abiding by the laws of perspective. So I'll go back up, and I have this convenient layer that serves as the backdrop for the table. So I don't really need to add a layer. I can tap in that layer because I want to be working also under the line drawing itself. So I'll switch my color back to white. I'll go back to the big sloppy brush, the flat brush. And I will now, my goal now, this is kind of like a masking, but done by hand. So I'll go in and I'll cover up that skylight so you don't see any of those joists and beams below it. So that's interesting. That's coming, in my designer mind now, that's coming alive for me. I'm like, okay, that works. And then the difference is I know that the top is going to be blue. So let me do another thing here. I'll go back up. Well, actually, I'll stay down here. I'm going to add a layer above this. And I'm going to say that this will be the brightest because it's looking out at the glaring white of the sun and the sky. And these are going to be a little bit grayer. Okay, so I'm just going to pick kind of a gray. And I guess I could do this. I could do the same thing in black and just press very lightly. So let's do it that way. I'm back in black. And I'm just going to, just like you were shading with a pencil, I'm just going to add a little shade to this. And again, the designer in me is thinking about, well, what material should that be? Maybe that'd be a nice, if that's a nice wood, it'll make a real nice contrast to all this crazy, steel and modern feeling of everything else. So I get to this point where really all I've thought about is the design so far, okay? And meaning the spacing of my paintings, the table I'm going to have for drinks in the middle and the bartender, and the skylight that I think I want in there. And the last thing I will do, as promised to Klaus, is I will add a new layer here. And I'm going to basically add a very light coat of gray all over this image. And that is going to become the basis out of which I pull the lighting effects that I want this gallery to have. So I know that's a vague explanation, but bear with me. I'll show you step by step how crazy this is. Because I've done this so many times, I am going to go in advance to something called multiply blend mode, okay? And what multiply blend mode, as you will all recall from your Photoshop studies, means that you will be able to see other details below this level, so long as those details are darker. So all of my solid black ink lines will show through, even though I make this a dark gray, and I make it as dark as this up here. Even though I make this a dark gray, all of this detail will show through. And I'll show you why I want that. So I'm going to make it as radical as possible and use straight black Okay, so I'll go back here to my rectangle selection tool. This is just a little trick to make it go faster. Remember, I'm in a new layer up here. I'll go to my rectangular selection tool. I'll pull a rectangle across just the part of the drawing that interests me. I'm going to cut off these extra blobby things at the edges. And I'm going to fill this layer with black, okay? So pretty much everything goes away, but by lightening this black now, by going into this hue, saturation, and brightness, I can bring that room back, but in a kind of a situation where someone has turned the lights off almost, and it's just, you know, a daylit room, but it's getting to be 6 o'clock at night or something. And then from that layer, and here comes the fun part, I can go to my eraser and I can go to my favorite soft brush, and I can literally, it's the same as it's as if I'd be drawing light, okay? So I know these paintings are going to be very brightly lit, right? So I'll just erase away the part of the black that covers over the paintings. And I'll give them kind of I'm being very imprecise here. I can also do this with this flat brush that I like, this, which I should probably stick with. So just by, I'm even seeing things in this. It's like I'm also adding to the art on the wall, just by taking away this gray area in over these paintings. Okay. And I get to here and I'm like, well, let's see, what else would glow in this room? Well, I know that the sky would be absolutely bright white, so I'll erase that. And I know that the sides of the skylight, again, through observation and many years of designing and practicing, I know that the sides of the skylight will be a lighter gray because they'll get a lot of light on them. Whereas underneath here in the ceiling, we'll barely get any light, direct light. I also know the windows will allow light in, but I'm going to make it like we have blinds over the windows. And again, here I am with my design cap ons. And then I know that I want the table to be the kind of secondary feature of the room. So I'll take that down to about halfway, but then I'll make it really small at the top because the top of the table will glow the most, okay? So then I evaluate all this, I get to this point and I'm like, it's still a little too dark maybe. And I realized that this light would come down and this light would start to illuminate this entire floor, okay? So now I can put a glow in for the floor.
The ceiling, how it turned out. Oh my God.
and now I can, okay, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I could also say, well, you know, paintings don't just light up by themselves like plastic panels. They occur in these pools of light. And remember, I am literally just erasing from this black layer, okay? And so these paintings will also, however you light them up here, will also spill onto the floor a little bit, right? So the floor that's closest to the wall, I'll give that some light and I'll make that really glow. And then we'll have some spotlights come down on this table. We'll make that floor glow. And I'll soften. I'm getting a little carried away. But only about 2 more minutes left, okay? And so I'll come up here and where I think I've made it a little too dark, I'll just add a little glow. I'll add some bouncing lights where lights occur. And the last thing I will do, and I'm looking at the zoom, so I don't want this to be too dark. I'll lighten the overall black background a little bit, okay? And the last thing I'll do, and this is where the real tricks come in as a renderer, is I will add another layer. I'll put that into that multiply, blend. You know what? Actually not. I'll just keep it normal, okay, just to show you the effect. So I've got a new layer. I'll go back to my freehand flat brush, okay? And now I know that these human beings are gonna, if you have an intense light and a human being is silhouetted against it, then that human being will also cast something of a shadow. So I'll darken up that human a little bit first, the person looking at this painting, and they're bending over, and maybe they've got, you know, they just took their grandchild to the art gallery for the first time. So here's, they want to inspire them. So here's the child. And they're kind of leaning in, looking at the painting. And when a person's in silhouette, you know, the very back of them is darker than the sides. And the last thing I'll do is I'll put in a shadow that this painting will actually become a source of light that will make a shadow fall behind these two. So I'll go down even smaller with my pen to get it right. And I'll just put a little shadow behind the grandfather and the granddaughter, trying to make it a nice emotional story for y'all. And there we have our little story. And that's what you want to, there's no better way to sell your ideas than to actually tell stories that people can relate to. So you can imagine if the CEO of Shinola, sorry to keep using that example, but maybe he has a granddaughter that wants to be an artist, and he just hasn't been able to connect with her yet. And he sees that, and he sees himself in front of that painting, and he's like, here's your money.
Interesting note. That's
Here's
good.
your money. So, okay, it's not my best work. Oh, I'm sorry. One really simple last thing. One simple last thing. Another great thing about Procreate, and
For us, keep going to the end of the class. We enjoy it.
no, because I have to ask Klaus to like come to my class too, and he's gonna want to. Well, it's up to you, Klaus. I'm happy to keep going, but I'll show you what I call down here the lighting brushes. So I've made my own set of brushes here. I call them the so-called.
Oh, you
Akers
speak German.
Architect. Wait, which word are you saying?
Above
Okay.
sketching.
Above sketching? Oh yeah. Yes. I am so sorry. I missed the joke.
No, it's the German version of yes. Yeah.
Oh, I realize that. I thought it might have had an H on the end, but I see. So I will go to what I call the lighting brushes, right? And there's this magical little brush down here called the flare brush. And remember, I'm on a new layer, and I've got my white loaded up, and I can now come in here. I have to make sure I activated that. I didn't actually activate it. So there's the flare brush is now activated. And actually, I can actually come in here and put in the little lights. The lights above.
Oh, interesting. It puts like lens flares in. Yeah.
Yeah, the lights above the dining table, the lights above, maybe these are track lights, lighting these paintings that are hanging below this steel beam over here. Okay. And really, there's nothing, I do this far too often. I do this with almost every job because it's just, again, it's a thing, as a watercolorist, I could never justify doing this. My snooty art colleagues would have my head if I ever tried to put in a light flare. But when it comes to designing architectural spaces and that kind of a thing, you really can't beat it. And so there is my demonstration for all of you.
To be honest, I never know this concept has all this stuff. And I have a quick question, but not for you, for Mr. Klaus, if he will let us redo the, the sketch again, so we can look for this one and
Yeah,
practice like that.
yeah. So there's a reason why I brought James in. Sketching is also a process of ideation. Hold on one second. Let me try to do it this way. Right. Yeah. Can you see this a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I sketch when I take mental notes. That stuff isn't pretty, but it helps me not to forget something. And sketching should not just only be the perfect 3-hour drawing. Sketching can also just be a quick note. No, he showed something that was more refined, but for example, what we would discuss today is your ideation sketch.
Yeah.
Think about, like, in terms of presentation, when you, so James, for example, he works and he presents to clients. So he presents kind of like, I don't want to say finished work, but he does not have to prove that he can design. He is going to be hired as a designer. When you, however, want to apply for as a graduate, as a student, as a graduate student, you want to apply for a job. In your first interviews, you need to tell people how you work. You're not established yet. And that's then where it's really important to show, here are my ideation sketches, quick and dirty, just mental notes. And then through the project documentation, you will show how your work gets more refined and more refined. That is why I also don't want, at the beginning of such a project, students already doing renderings, because you would essentially do the last piece and ignore all the creative process that could happen at the beginning. So everything what you did for today is fine. It does not have to be redone. We're going to continue actually refining the sketches. And that's the reason why I also brought him today, to show how informative these types of illustrations can be, because they tell a story.
How can he come one more time if he doesn't have time now to show us how to do outside the green and the trees and stuff like that?
The what?
Can he come next, like one more time, to show us how we can design the outside, the green, like the garden, the field, stuff like that, trees, and the way he show us how he did the interior, how he can do the exterior, if you don't mind? That would be great.
It's up to class. I'm happy to do it if you're all
yeah. I will come twice to you then too, to make it fair.
Well, that's very nice of you. I just wanted to try and reinforce your point, Klaus, that a lot of times, these are a lot of the work I do is very, you can see how small that is, very quick things. Don't be fooled by how, again, I'll show you, maybe this really is the most useful thing, because I mean, I've worked very hard at still trying to make these charming sketches, but I really want to emphasize how ugly these began, right?
Mm.
So this was a client that wanted Lincoln log chairs.
But it's actually, I think, like, saying ugly is a wrong term. When I was a student, what really frustrated me, and only later as a faculty in one art history class, it just made sense. As a student, you only see the finished work. You study art and you see the finished work. And in art history, they don't necessarily, at least to me, they never really showed the process as much. And you just, everybody blocks stuff out. Hardly anybody just started painting upper left corner and then finished lower right corner. It was all mapped out before they really started doing something. So it's kind of like what you're doing is just an efficient, like, blocking things out before you really put in all the details.
Well, it's true, and again, it's you're right about. I think what's so interesting about this video replay that's built in is exactly what you're saying, that so here, you know, and again, I also like to stress the fact that this is something, you know, anybody can find these images on the web and tilt them and then use that as the beginning of an inspiration for a little vignette of an art gallery. This was an art gallery for toys made by Hasbro, right? And so I think what's so exciting about the iPad and any number of apps is they become this playground for your ideas. You know, they like I didn't know where this wall was going to go, but I had the ability to just quickly move each of these up, select them, move them, and then again there goes that, you know, scrubby, and ugly is a bad word. It's minimal. It's the minimal gesture for your mind to take the next leap, because really it's about your mind going there first.
Well, and also the amount of time you only have.
And the amount of time.
You don't want to spend too much time on the detail. Later you have to correct it. So you block it out with a quick study, and then appropriately later you start putting more details and more work in.
And that's a good point, which I would like to underscore to your students, which is that when I a lot of times I go and work in architects' offices, so I'll see all these new generations of first-time employees coming in, and one of the most important things that they never ask, and nor would I tell them proactively, but I see a lot of people when they're asked to come up with an idea, and it's their first exciting time, like, oh, wow, I got a chance to show the boss what I can do. And they'll take a single idea and just work it way too hard, rather than showing 5 or 6 very schematic ideas, really simple line sketches. Because your future boss wants to know how you think. They don't want to know how opinionated you are that you are right, but they want to know how broadly you can think about the problem and help them think about the problem too. So, you know, 6 different line sketches, even though they may look bad, communicate to your design bosses that you know how to analyze a problem and look at the different possibilities. And then only then, once you help them choose a direction, then you can begin to add more and more to it, so they can also imagine it more and more. But it's such a common mistake that I see.
Mm.
Have you seen that too, Klaus, in the world?
Yeah, no, it's the same also with render fatigue. Just this overworked piece, and it's just also strategically really bad, because if that idea then isn't even good, then you wasted all that time. And it's also maybe not appropriate actually, because it's like with a portfolio. When you apply for a job, you want to show who you are, how do you work, like as you said, like how do you analyze data and how do you develop actually proposals. And like in senior seminar we talk about this a lot. The usual classical problem students do when they write the cover letter, I know, let's say SketchUp, but every person HR expects you to know it, so it's kind of like pointless to put it down. But what they're really interested in is, so what can you do with it? Right. And that's kind of like also what you say. Instead of making one perfect piece or just one detailed flashed out SketchUp model, it's the same in 3D modeling too. Create multiples, make variations, and then see what happens. And on the other side, in addition, something I stress to the students too, if you only focus on one idea, you might come up with a good idea, but you might not. And if you use quantity as a brainstorming tool, you increase the chances that maybe from these 6 ideas, 4 are complete junk, but 2 might be really good. I like that. And I wanted to follow up on a point you made about if you spend too much time, the render fatigue, if you spend too much time on one idea,
no one wants to see you overworking an idea. So not only do you waste your own time, but you also lower your own esteem in the eyes of the boss, because the boss said, well, they're not making a good use of their time. They overdid one idea when I wanted to see 5 very simple beginnings of ideas, kernels of an idea. So you not only waste your time, you wasted your boss's time, and you place yourself in more danger in the employment environment as to who gets ahead and who gets laid off. So I think it's very important.
Yeah, it's process. Yeah.
Okay. Well, should I leave you alone to your rest of your class?
Yeah, I mean, this was a much longer demo than anticipated, but it was really good. And I think for the students, it was great to see also how you work and what, like, I think the last demo was really interesting, developing that story. And I really personally love actually how you personalize it. James and I, we were just fantasizing. So what happens if we bring in Shanola for fundraising, actually for Glow, and try to do something? But that's kind of like his point he made. Let's say we would present this to Shanola, and then there's something you would put in they could relate to. It would help. Anybody of you have any questions?
I was just going to ask you. I think it'd be fun to take. I've got nothing else to do. I mean, I got real world work to do, but I don't want to do that. So I'm all yours. Oh, could I just make a quick point about? So if I were really to go further with that story, I would have started at the entrance to the art gallery, and how your design in this new neighborhood was going to bring life to this neighborhood. And my storyboards for your design might even start with a flyer tacked to a bulletin board in one of the local hipster coffee shops, right? What would that flyer look like? What would the advertising line be? Like, what clever thing could you say about, art in a new neighborhood, right? And then you'd show that sign outside of that gallery. And then you'd show what happens when you first get in, and how you're met by a person that gives you a glass of Prosecco, and then how at the end somebody volunteers to organize your car ride home, or your trip in your van home. Would you like to join these other people? So you really want to think about your design. Just stretch your minds and figure out, what am I doing? What is the transformation that I'm really aimed at with my design? And I think in this case, your transformation is revitalize a part of the neighborhood, and give hope to a bunch of emerging artists that they'll have a new venue. And I mean, I can't stress that enough. If you can internalize that, then you're not looking at what you have to do as a job. You're like, oh my gosh, I can make a difference in this world. Okay, that's crazy what I just said, but I'm going to go with it anyway. Okay. All right. How about questions?
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
So question number 1, when do you decide that you were going to go on a new layer? Because some of your sketches has so many details. Like, what is it, the thing that you're like, oh, okay, I have to put this on a new layer?
Definitely, it's definitely. I'm going to be a little bit dramatic about it. It's fear. Okay, I put things on new layers that I'm afraid the client is going to change later. Or for instance, I put all of my colors. Let's say I'm doing a design, interior design, and there are 8 different colors or wallpapers or material patterns in that design. Let's say there's a marble, there's a wood floor, there's a wall color, there is a feature panel. Every single one of those will be on a new layer, because I have had so much experience with clients wanting to change something and just saying to myself, oh crap, I got too many things on that layer, and it's just more work. So just, I use layers strategically to minimize the work that may happen later. And that idea comes from my experience with how often and who my client is and how likely they are to change things.
Okay, I see. Actually makes sense. The fear does make sense.
Yeah.
I think that's what I think of that too. I feel like, oh my God, do I want to put this on that layer? But it does actually make sense.
Yeah, it can be a pain. There is the ability to merge layers after the fact.
Mhm.
And a lot of times I will both curse myself and pat myself on the back for having had 60 layers, because it'll come time for the client to change something and they'll always say, uh-oh, would it be hard to do that? Could you do that? And I'll say, I don't know, it's gonna be pretty tough. And it'll take me 3 minutes to do it, but I'll never tell them that. So,
Mm.
it's really, layers are your friends. That's all I'll say.
Okay, awesome. And then question
I
number
agree. Yeah.
would be, so what is a common mistakes you see a student do in sketching? I'm pretty new to sketching on the iPad. This is like my second semester.
Okay.
I just want to see what is it something that I have to pay attention? Maybe something that I haven't noticed that is wrong? Is there something that you see is very common that students do?
Well, I would say, I guess I wouldn't really call it a mistake, but I think I would say make sure you're taking full advantage of the forgivingness of the medium. So you can, when I do my so-called blob sketches, or and they used to be called back in the day on pencil and paper, it would just be called using a fat pencil or a fat pen. But when I use my fat pens to do drawings and work them up, it'll sometimes be 2, 3 layers before I ever get more precise with a more precise pen. So use that, like suspend your own fears about your own talent. I'm talking to myself now too. Suspend your own fears that, oh, I could never do this. Oh, I'm not good at this. Oh, I'm not good at math. I can't be an architect. I can't draw. I can't do this. I can't do that. Just suspend them in the privacy of your own workspace and let layers be your friend, and just practice seeing things and the gestures that you make. And so that's how you develop hand-eye coordination. And that's how you develop your drawing talent, by making tens of thousands of mistakes, but getting better. And that nothing could be better. Photoshop had layers, which changed everything, but this is layers with a pencil. You can't beat it. And in fact, I failed to mention that the reason I finally made the transition from watercolor to all digital was the very month, the week that the Apple Pencil came out. That was the game changer for me. I'm like, finally, it's here. And I knew it was by Apple, and I knew the iPad was by Apple, so I didn't have to mess around with any halfway solution like a Waco drawing tablet. I'm sure they're great, but or I guess it's called Wacom, sorry. But I don't feel it. I don't feel the Wacom. Now, I had to, find the money to indulge in the Apple Pencil and the iPad, but I was an older established professional by then. I don't hold it against anyone that can't get an Apple Pencil and an iPad, but the sooner you do, the happier you will be. And versus, because with a Wacom, you're looking here, but the drawing's happening up there. Well, that's not true. I guess I have this long held bias against these things, so I'm sorry for that. But
No, I agree with you. I always tried it. I just gave it away. Some people can really work really well with a Wacom. I never could. And actually, concept is it when concepts came out on an iPad, like, okay, I buy one now. Just,
Yeah. And I was the
I
same
can
with
switch.
the Apple Pencil. The Apple Pencil Liberated was the most important event.
Because I had a Wacom Cintiq, also Microsoft Surface Pro and the book, and they're good devices, but the pencil is really that sets Apple apart. The pencil is just very natural the way how it works.
Yeah, it really is.
I have a quick question. Does our concept has the same tools that you have, that you show us in the presentation? Because I'm not sure if it's the same level as what you have. I mean, our app, is it up to date to use the tool that you have?
That's a question for your teacher. And I don't mean to get your teacher in trouble. I'm just
No, I'm just saying, because I see many tools and I didn't see it before, unless I was blind. I didn't know about
Concept
it.
is a pixel-based program, so it has few things. Procreate is a concept. Procreate is a pixel-based painting app, so it has few features traditionally vector programs don't have. So, for example, in concepts, you cannot just erase something a little bit away. You will erase the path, so you will remove the object. That's just a given. On the other side, there are a lot of things Procreate does not have that Concept has. It's just there are two different workways. Like in the video I made when I redid his three-dimensional exhibit space, I drew everything with black, and then later I selected all the lines, adjusted the lines. That's already something you cannot do in any other program besides Concepts.
Yeah, I watched that. Yeah, but the lighting that he showed us last one, is it exist in? Because I like that idea, because it turned really the gallery, like it turned the light on, like turn it.
Yeah, you
really
would use
like,
the mask. You would use the mask brush for that, the soft mask
okay,
brush.
okay. Thank you. I have no more question. Thanks.
case dismissed.
I actually have one more question.
No, I mean, it's not like one is better. It's just both the work fundamentally different. While they have a big shared part, they offer different drawing abilities. Kind of because I do also a lot of furniture design. I really like drawing and knowing how long are the lines.
Yeah, no, that's an important point, because pixel-based means I'm just changing little tiny dots on the surface, but class is actually each line, and I'm envious of this because I want to learn this, but each line can be infinitely scaled, and it can also be exported to three-dimensional programs. So there's a real advantage in it for architects, and that's why I've invited him. He doesn't know yet, but he's going to be working very hard teaching my students both Shaper 3D and concepts. I guess we're going to jam you into. Would you be willing to try 2 hours plus?
Class, he taught us also the Shaper, 3D Shaper, and it's a very nice program.
Yeah,
and I wish this can be used on the big laptop or the concept, because last time, like, we were like up all night using the small iPad, it killed your back. So I wish we can use it on different, for like a laptop or a desktop to be, it's more, I know it's a sketch and you have to use the pencil.
Concepts actually runs on a PC.
Oh, it does? Wow, surprised. I didn't know that.
It just does not run, but you still then need I mean, you could use the mouse, but it's very it kind of
It's a
defeats the
pain. It's
purpose.
gonna be a
You would need
pain.
a Wacom tablet or any type of a tablet. And James now asked me also if I, as he said, like, I could come in and show his students how concepts and Shaper works, because it's both on an iPad. One additional thing also to maybe add to what James also started saying. Again, this goes back to how he and I really see drawing. When we teach drawing, we're not teaching fine art students. The goal is not that you will make a drawing that later will be sold and goes into your collection. We're trying to teach you tools which can, for what you have to do, effectively communicate an idea. Do I do 3D renderings? Yes, of course. This is my big focus. But as I showed you also in my own furniture design, I start with really small sketch drawings too. It's just really how do you develop your ideas, and I'm for example one of the for example in education, I do not believe in separating 3D modeling and hand drawing. Just they're two opposite things. For me, they're perfect additions. For example, he took a screenshot from Procreate and then started sketching over it. No, he did some of the drawing also freehand because he studied already. He memorized how things should look roughly. And that's another thing also, how to approach drawing. Like when he mentioned, just you have to start somewhere. If you want to get good at it, you need to put in hours in. But I sometimes saw students thinking, well, if I make a screenshot of SketchUp, then it's kind of, and then I draw over it, then that's kind of cheating. Not necessarily cheating. You just work maybe a little bit more effective. I could construct all the perspective grids.
That's what I do. I do it in SketchUp and then take it to concept and I cheat. Most of the time.
Yeah, but here's the thing: it's not necessarily cheating. If you memorized how things have to look and you can draw it freehand, perfect. But if you do not have that memorized, well, then use helpers and like making a screenshot of a 3D space and then using as an underlay. I do professionally too, because I can get the work done faster. Because again, I'm not being paid for making a pretty drawing. I'm being paid for developing an idea, and sketching is just a tool to develop that idea, nothing else. At least for what I do.
And I would just add to that a lot of times I'll get a call from a client that knows this particular sketchy style that I do. I'll show you an example without trying to go into the deep end too much. Maybe I won't. Oh, here we go. Here's an example of a drawing. This is for TED Talks. And they were trying to do a quick, they were trying to add an additional room to the TED Talk venue. And here's that trick we just used, right? Where I added all that kind of twilight over there and then erased away to create the most exciting lighting I could. But I also, well, I'm getting off the point, which is that what I did, my client really thought, they said, oh, that sketch thing you do, right? And I'm like, great. But the first thing I did without telling my client was I went immediately to SketchUp. And I'm like, I don't want to make up that room. And they sent me a plan. So I just I'm getting pretty fast at SketchUp, but I think in 2.5 hours, I had all the underlying, let's see if I can find it. All the underlying parts of this room. And there again, that was each of the room had interchangeable parts that I could switch out. But I used that line trick that in the style, finding the right style in SketchUp, so I didn't have to redraw things. And I even accidentally left the dotted lines in that SketchUp puts in. So I would really agree with Klaus that the trick really is to use all of these together
Yep.
at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and not to be, and I've come from a place where I'm like really possessive and proud of Procreate. I have to really watch myself because I'll start talking trash on the other apps during class. I'm like, wait, that's not my job. What am I doing? You know, I need to show each of them in their best light. So can you imagine how lucky I am that I met class just in time, you know, to introduce my class to Shaper 3D. Now I don't have to, you know, work for 40 hours to try and master them. So I'm very grateful for that.
Well, I hope they will like Shaper.
Oh, I mean, I loved it. I played
yeah.
with it for about 4 hours one day, and I think it's amazing.
Yeah, it's really based on what you need to do. It is like drawing in 3D. It's not really 3D modeling. It's more like sketching.
Yeah. No, I think it's important to have exposure to it and figure out.
Actually, I give tomorrow morning a workshop again at
in Shaper 3D.
11:30. Yeah, let's Tuesday mornings 11:30 is always when I give the workshop for them.
Okay.
If you would be interested, I can send you an invite for it, or they contact you.
I'd be very interested, but I think I'm going to get a lot from you. But by the way, I haven't even checked. I hope it's not date night for you on Wednesday night. Are you available in 9:30 Eastern time? So that would be 8:30 where you are. Are you available at 8:30 p.m.?
No, that's on a Wednesday. That could be tricky, but I can try to arrange it.
Okay. All
But
right.
that's the evening when Luisa goes to dance class.
Okay. I may be in trouble. We'll see.
Is it Dance with the Star?
Yeah.
No, it's hilarious. So see, she goes to dance class now since quite some time, and we now started talking about the final presentation they're going to do. And since that moment, she doesn't want to go anymore because Luisa does not like the spotlight.
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. The final presentation at dance class. At dance class,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, we will try to work something out, or ask my in-laws maybe to come over for that moment to help out. So it should work. There are ways to do that.
Well, I'm asking you way too late, but here's another human moment for all your students to observe. So.
Well, I mean, that's just the way how it goes. I mean, the workshop for Shaper, they are in Budapest in Hungary, so it's just I'm used to working in different time zones.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go.
It's all good. All good.
Right.
Very good. Perfect.
Any other questions I can answer?
Thanks so much for being here. And please don't confuse your student. Like I was confused. Who's my teacher, you or him? Like the screen, like looking up and down. I was confused. Where's my teacher? Same glasses, same color, same hair, same beard, same everything, same shirt too. I'm confused.
Well, he's better looking than I am. That's how you can tell.
Oh, thank you. You have a nicer hairstyle.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll watch out. I'll wear like a shirt next time, so we'll see. But, okay. All right. Well, thank you all. I loved your questions and I loved your attention, meaning your ability to have attention, not the fact that you were attending to me. But that was really, really nice. Thanks, class.
No, you're welcome. This was pretty awesome. It was a very good demonstration about how sketching works and how you apply to your work. Well,
there aren't many of us left, so we have to find each other and then share ourselves amongst our students. So
well, I think with the iPad that's coming back, because just the time of oil water gouache. I mean, I learned it as a student myself too, and I really enjoyed actually. I stepped away from my mom because I tried to find my old professor's book, and he made a book that listed all the different illustration styles, no matter what discipline. But that time is just gone. But with the iPad, a new tool is there, and sometimes the way how I tell this also to students is things update, you had portrait painters, and then came photography, and the industry of portrait painters more or less died out and was but replaced by portrait photographers. And I really believe that 3D modeling and rendering is still very time intensive for the ideation. If you really want to have details, and quick drawing by hand is still actually faster. But the Wacom was a really, I mean, you either like it, you can get along with it, or you don't. I didn't. And the iPad was just the missing tool we needed. And I feel people cannot go back and grow into it.
I agree. I think it's a real watershed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
All
it's
because-
affordable. It's not that expensive.
Right. Oh, I just priced out M1s about 3 days ago. I needed an adapter at my Apple store, so I went and also looked at the M1, and I was surprised. It was, it sounds expensive, but $12.99 for the absolute hottest iPad or tablet on the planet is kind of amazing.
Oh, or if you buy markers, each marker is around $5-6. You need to refill it or replace it.
Yeah.
And it accumulates to a lot of hundreds of dollars too. And with the iPad, yeah, it's a bigger one-time investment, but then you don't have any follow-up costs.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it. And now you'll see me make a fool of myself trying to sign out of my Zoom.
Actually, this class is also nearly done, so it was perfect.
Okay.
James,
All right.
again, thank you. This was really great. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see your progress. Maybe I'll see you at finals or something.
Yeah, when they're ready and to have stuff to work and present, if you're interested, I'm more than happy to bring you in for critique.
That'd be fun.
Cool. Okay, perfect.
All
See
right.
you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so